Prey, the latest installment in the flagging Predator franchise, is set in the early 1700s. The plains and rivers inhabited by the Comanche tribe are visited by a homicidal space alien that discovers it is no match for the Earth's #1 unassailable force: modern identity politics, fantasy representation, and hyper-empowerment of heroines in modern screenwriting. This is a force powerful enough to make flakier reviewers almost peremptorily gushing in their praise, despite the film never being gripping, never quite surmounting its franchise's tropes, and the lead actress having the personality and acutely limited dynamic acting range of Aubrey Plaza.
I was waiting for it to circle back.
Vaginas and owner's manual.
Hold on a second. Wait.
Guess I'll just go somewhere else.
No.
Many reviewers have even said that this is the best Predator film since the original. But so what? That's like saying 2023 will be the best year we've had since 2016. Just because it might be marginally better than the shitstorm, the splattering diarrhea shit tornado, the flatulent low-pressure system bringing about an excremental cyclone drenching multiple states in fecal matter of the preceding years, it doesn't make it good by default. This film has received a fair bit of criticism over the way its heroine is depicted. The basic problem is one of multiple layers of suspension of disbelief the film asks of the viewer. We are asked to suspend our disbelief that a young Comanche girl in the 1700s, in a strictly codified society of gender roles, is able to resist those fixed roles and assert herself as a warrior. Sure. Once we've done that, we then have to suspend our disbelief that her instincts, judgment, and composure under crushing pressure is every bit that the equal of the men, that she is able to contest the young male warriors to their faces and defy the instructions of the senior male. Okay. Having suspended our disbelief about this, we then have to suspend our disbelief that she wouldn't be traumatized into a numb stupor by the materializing out of thin air of a vicious monster alien from beyond the stars, then suspend our disbelief further that she would be capable of surviving more than 20 seconds in the presence of such a brutal-looking murderous warrior from an advanced civilization with protective armor and an arsenal of ingeniously lethal technology, no doubt tested and refined over generations against the universe's most formidable adversaries. And suspend our disbelief further that she can, in fact, hold her own and outwit and ultimately kill such a creature. But this is only one of the film's problems. You see, in Prey, the characters are barely differentiated, and with little to no character development or compelling dialogue, we struggle to learn or remember any of their names and comprehend them in only the most functional sense as archetypes. Tribal elder assigned no dialogue whatsoever, hot-headed and resentful male who doesn't want the girl to hang out with the boys. Make up the numbers background characters who are apportioned a fight scene each with the alien so that we feel nothing when they are eviscerated because we had only the barest sense of who they were. The consequences of this lack of differentiation and character development is that their deaths are largely meaningless. We are essentially just watching gratuitous violence. The film features a brother and sister in the tribe. The plucky young sister wants to prove herself as a warrior. Things seem to go wrong on her first big hunt. But the younger sister grows more and more certain that some other creature is stalking the land. Being a young woman of little consequence, her warnings go largely unheeded. The film's worst spell is the introduction of some French settlers who were also on the trail of the alien. This was an opportunity to open up and expand the film with an additional element or triangular structure of predator and prey. Instead, the French characters are ridiculous, reduced to the dumbest caricatures of villains, scenery-chewing cartoon characters who leer and cackle and lurch and strut as if dropped in from an entirely different and much more lightweight film. There is goofy, deliberate comedy when a Frenchman about to be killed says merde. It's funny, you see, because that's the French word for shit. In another scene, they group slowly around some flashing lights of three little devices, which, given everything that's happened in the preceding 3 minutes of gothic violence, could only be destructive, yet they lean over it anyway, followed by an explosion. You see, it's funny because they were dumb. There is even some inadvertent comedy. The heroine is given instructions on how to use a pistol by a Frenchman whose leg has been cut off. Somehow he is able to give calm and cogent exposition despite the excruciating pain and the lingering presence of an alien from beyond the stars. Before the final confrontation, the heroine uses a male character with a gun as a lure for the predator. She then delivers a girl boss monologue that sounds by extraordinary coincidence something penned by a screenwriter in the year 2022. She talks about how she is the real predator and she has the real power because she is overlooked and invisible. It's a metaphor. Do you understand? It's a metaphor.
You think that I'm not a hunter like you. And I'm not a threat. That is what makes me dangerous.
The film ends with her, of course, adopting the mantle as the tribe's new warrior queen, with the little girl beaming up at her as a role model. Most wannabe novelists fail because they make the same amateur mistake. They are driven by wish fulfillment. The plot reflects a relationship they wish they'd established, a persona they had never developed, a recognition as a hero or special figure they had never received in real life. The problem with this wish fulfillment is its indulgence creates a huge blind spot. They are too busy reveling in fantasy to heed the most important consideration, the audience, who have fantasies of their own and don't want to live vicariously through someone else's, especially if that someone else is more preoccupied with themselves than with an audience. So in films like this, there is a strong undercurrent of wish fulfillment and fantasy, of an empowered, perfectly idealized heroine who is morally flawless and possesses near-perfect instincts and judgment. The only aspects that seem like vulnerabilities or flaws aren't really flaws at all. Rather, there are only ways in which she is hindered by tradition, gender roles, the skepticism and dull-wittedness or insecurities of others. Having agency thwarted and acting anyway is bold, but isn't character growth. At the heart of storytelling is a character arc. We like them for their flaws. The same is true for some of my favorite films, which feature great heroines. In Alien, Sigourney Weaver's Ripley was a nobody, part of a crew of space truckers who were suddenly imperiled by an alien on their vessel. Gradually, Ripley finds agency, finds inner resolve and resilience in the face of terrible odds, and we become intensely emotionally invested in her fate because her uneven growth is relatable and human. At the beginning of The Terminator, Sarah Connor is a nobody, a waitress without much in the way of confidence or plans. Subjected to intense strain and anxiety, she very gradually develops as a character, making good decisions, becoming resilient, and ultimately prevailing, without exceeding the inherent limitations of someone of her experience or circumstances. That's why it is so frustrating and tedious to see a character like the protagonist of Prey, who from the outset is shown wielding an axe brilliantly, hunts brilliantly, makes sly quips and ripostes, and veils herself among the male hunters and trackers, matches up to them in decision-making, and literally every single time she is overruled, she is in the right in her judgment, and is proven so by subsequent events. She wins or draws in every entanglement and fight, and even what we are led to believe is a moment of hubris in her first major hunt turns out to lead to a moment when, Rey Skywalker-like, we have our expectations or assumptions subverted. She doesn't simply equal or transcend her brother, the limited mentor figure in this tale. The mentor himself is exposed as basing much of his prestige on what we discover, through his admission, was his reliance on some of her earlier brilliance and fabulousness. While it may be gratifying to portray heroines like this, there is an inevitable side effect. It's boring. The character, being already brilliant and fabulous and a girl boss, has only a limited space to grow and change as a character, which is the inherent core of all good storytelling. The other aspect of this boredom is the absence of stakes. If we know the heroine is inherently fabulous, then we already know at the outset of each confrontation what the outcome is going to be, because such an empowered girl boss cannot be depicted being bested by a man under any circumstances, so there is no drama. Why feel invested in rooting for someone when you know that they are going to kick ass? You watch with a neutral sense of wanting to move on to the next thing, or neutrally just enjoying the choreography. Put at its simplest, we like to root for the underdog. But if a girl boss heroine is protected by both plot armor and gender empowerment armor, then you don't feel much of anything at all. The biggest flaw of the film, besides its super idealized heroine, near total absence of good acting, lame and poorly contextualized comedy, lack of compelling stakes or emotional investment, lopsided pacing and poorly designed peaks and troughs of action, is the sense that it just wasn't made by grown-ups. The first Predator film had a kind of by-the-numbers cheesy action thriller first act, but when the Predator was introduced, in glimpses and disconcerting scenes, you had the sense of figuratively sitting up straight and being drawn into something genuinely engrossing and visceral. You felt for the characters and experienced a sting of genuine drama and intense suspense when each was picked off. You knew their names and personalities, and things moved at an electrifying pace with incredible escalation. Not the stop-start indulgence in tropes and segregated set pieces of this modern effort. In addition, in the original, Schwarzenegger began as a kind of superhero, a bulletproof, oiled-up monolith and force of nature, ridiculously cool in a firefight and delivering slick one-liners while dispatching mercenaries. But as the film progresses, he is humbled and rattled by this other presence, wasting ammunition, firing skittishly into the empty jungle, struggling to cope, and at times genuinely bereft of ideas and able at best to find respite in hiding. By contrast, this heroine's demeanor barely changes, no matter the circumstances. If an alien from beyond the stars materializes in front of her, which to someone of her time and context would have been the equivalent of a visitation by a god and been mortifying beyond reason, or when her brethren are massacred in gory decapitations and disembowelments, her expression and composure barely alters beyond her eyes widening without any particular sensation emanating from them, and her mouth parting slightly. Partly this is down to the actress's inability to emote, but partly down to the script positioning her as an inherently powerful human spirit. It makes her an incredibly strong character, but there is a world of difference between a powerful character and a believable and compelling one. If, in the first act, this character had made genuine mistakes, or had alienated her peers by being obnoxious, or her reach exceeded her grasp and she endangered them due to her hubris and need to prove herself, or she was racked by guilt and ostracized for such actions, and she subsequently evolved, accounted and atoned and adapted to redeem herself, or reconcile with the others, or learnt to be an agile hunter, this film would have been amazing because we would have avidly followed the arc of her journey. But this is 2022, and a young woman, as a heroine in a film, can't be depicted that way.